On today's episode, Padres fans and folks, man, they've been going through it over this offseason and the last year or so, and the idea of trading fan favorite Ha-Seong Kim would make that even more horrible and morbid, dare I say. But we got to talk about why it makes sense for the team going forward, as much as it might hurt.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Thursday, February 8th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, and at LO_Padres for only Padres tweets. And then Locked On Padres on YouTube to check out my sick jacket, my sick 1969 Padres jacket that I got for Christmas because I'm lucky like that. You know what I mean? Today's episode, guys, is going to be a fun one because we're talking about Ha-Seong Kim and we're talking about trading him because I, being the masochistic master, would love for people to be mad at me. That's why I'm wearing my jacket. Just to let y'all know, like, I do like this team. Don't worry. You know what I mean? I really do like this team. I need some fan cred, dare I say. We're going to be talking about why trading him makes sense, and especially because it has been rumored a lot lately. We're going to be talking about that, guys, and I got a bunch of different reasons, and I think that while they might not make a lot of sense to some people, and people might hate that just the idea of trading one of your best players after one of his best years sounds pretty ridiculous for a team that's in a win-now mode. I've got my reasons, and we'll talk about it. It's going to be fun. Don't worry, it'll be fun. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by Gametime, though. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Go check that out. Here's the thing. Like I said, I'm a masochist, and I want people to be mad at me. Because as if people who of Padre land don't already hate me. Ha-Seong Kim recently was actually brought up by Ken Rosenthal in his latest kind of mailbag, talking about the Padres situation and discussing, the signing of some free agents, for their outfield situation. We talked about that on yesterday's podcast. He mentioned Michael A. Taylor as possible, but it seems like it's more likely that, the Padres will use Merrill, Marcy, and Graham Pauley, that they're going to use the spring auditioning those guys. One thing that he mentioned was, and I'm going to quote from the article here, on another note on the Padres, they continue to draw significant trade interest in second baseman Ha-Seong Kim, according to sources briefed on the discussions. Kim is eligible for free agency at the end of the season, but he was among the Padres' best players in 2023, so the acquisition cost would be high. So, we've been hearing this for a while now. And I'm someone who actually posited this theory a long time ago. I think I said this like a month and a half ago that they should consider trading him, or maybe even longer than that I thought that it might make sense because I think that this is a player that is really, really good, but I think that this would be the peak example of a sell high. And by the way, if you're curious, over on justbaseball.com, my article should be out by the time that you listen to this episode, if you prefer the written version of what I'm about to say. And also just go check out Just Baseball, great website. I've got some cool stuff in the works over there. I think that it's a sign that the team knows, like, this really is our best trade asset. Like, this is easily our best trade asset. And it stinks because Kim is a fan favorite. Last year, just to recap quickly, Ha-Seong Kim was one of the only things that went right for the Padres. I'd say him, Blake Snell, and Luis Campusano were kind of like the best things that happened for the team last year. And then Tatis being like the best defender in baseball. That was also pretty cool. But Ha-Seong Kim, this is a guy who started off, and by the way, I just want to throw it out there for some more cred. I was one of those people not giving up on him after that first year. And I think that some people were. They were like, oh God, this is another, Francisco Mejia type situation where like the bat speed is there, but he just doesn't get to the ball in time and whatnot. And he was overpowered. 71 WRC plus, only a 0.5 F4. But I was really bullish on him. Go look up Just Baseball that I called him the Padres' secret weapon for the 2022 season. Then what happens? 3.7 F4 because the defense was good and he became an average offensive player, acclimating to that high velocity, doing a lot better, walking a lot more, decent slash line, 106 WRC plus, good player. And then this past year, he was one of the few things, like I said, that went well, and he was also really clutch. One of the best Padres players in high leverage situations. Yes, as a total, if you look up, hitting with runners in scoring position, which is why you can't just look at that he wasn't as good as other players. But when it really mattered, i.e., yeah, maybe in the top of the second or third or fourth, whatever it was, maybe he didn't drive in the runs, but when it mattered, he always seemed to be there. He's one of the first players that hit a walk-off for the team last year, and that was awesome. It was I believe what was that guy? David Dahl hit the tying shot, and then Ha-Seong Kim won it. And he also improved greatly with his walk rate. Again, it went up from 7.4% rookie year to 8.8%, then to 12%. His strikeout rate went up a little bit, but he also coupled that with some more power. 17 home runs on the year was very nice. He turned more of his fly balls into home runs, pulled them more, especially loves that left field spot at Petco. That was really great and all. 112 WRC plus. He actually was at one point one of the top 25 players in F4. The problem is that he finished the season horrendously, and that stinks. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not going to hold it super against him because the rest of the team was quite bad. And some guys who didn't show up for the whole season decided to have their best moment in September. But in September and October, he had a 36 WRC plus, which is why he didn't finish a lot higher. Otherwise, he would have probably finished a lot higher. He just had an atrocious month. But what's great about Ha-Seong Kim is even during an atrocious month like that, he's still a great defender. Everybody knows this. He won a Gold Glove. It's awesome. Last year, over at second base, in 2023 at second base, 10 defensive runs saved and 7 outs above average. Guy is not ever bad. He's even good at third base, where he played a few innings last year as well. 3 defensive runs saved, 2 outs above average. And even at shortstop, 3 defensive runs saved, 0 outs above average. But still, he is a utility beast. And also, if you're a fantasy baseball player, stole 38 bags last year. Low-key, stole 38 bases. He was just so exciting. And like I said, one of the few Padres that weren't bad in high-leverage situations. So why the heck would you trade him? Well, that's the complicated part. And I think that one of the issues with trading Kim is, number one, what would be the right team to go to, right? There are a lot of teams that I looked up into. You've got the Giants, who I talked about a couple months ago with my buddy Ben Kaspic. Maybe the Cleveland Guardians, depending on how they feel about Brian Raccio. That is a team that could potentially send back some bullpen help, any pitching help of any kind, because that is a team that seems to always have pitchers, by the way, and is a frequent trade partner with the Padres, so it's kind of guaranteed that they make moves. The Cubs, he would actually probably not play at second base or shortstop, so this would be a little bit of a stretch, but he'd probably play third base, where he can also still be effective as a player. So maybe the Cubs are a team. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they've been needing someone for a while, but that probably wouldn't make sense because they don't have money. The Miami Marlins are crazy enough to try and do this. Although also the problem with the Marlins is they appear to be going the bold route of giving up following their first playoff appearance in 20 years. They're like, actually, we need to get worse. We're getting rid of our GM. We're getting rid of our manager. We're not going to spend. We're going to lose all of our guys. It's just it's just very funny to me how baseball works. The Tampa Bay Rays are always a team that we trade with, and that team has needed a little bit of infield help, especially at third base for a while. I believe Taylor Wells is their starter. And hey, that could be a big player for them, and could be the type of player that if they like him, they can extend him, and wouldn't be someone super out of their price range because he's a utility player. I don't think that he's going to go for too much. The Kansas City Royals are randomly deciding to buy lately. He could fit in for that team. And then maybe, potentially, possibly the Mariners at third base. Maybe that could be a team, especially because that is a team with a lot of pitching. But those are just some ideas. And frankly, Ken Rosenthal also mentions in this article the idea of trading for outfielders. The Brewers have a glut of those right now. Maybe the Brewers are interested in him. I don't know. But bottom line is there are certainly a lot of teams out there, I think, even just quickly at a glance that I just mentioned, would be interested in Ha-Seong Kim because of this last year. And we're going to also continue in just a second, guys, to talk about why other reasons that I think the Padres need to trade him. And I mean when I say need to trade Ha-Seong Kim. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, take a second to talk to you about Gametime. We love Gametime here. We love it, ladies and gentlemen. Look, it's sometimes when I buy tickets, man, it ain't fun. It ain't fun. You know what I mean? Maybe sometimes I get them for a friend. Sometimes I'm helping out someone and I'm like, this is a pain in the butt. There's all these different annoying competing ticketing services, but you won't have to worry for your next big event because Gametime is here for you. It is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports and other things. That's right. This is just because it's called Game Time doesn't mean they don't have you covered on other stuff, guys. You want to go see the Beyonce tour? I think that's still going on. I don't know. You want to go see Green Day? I think they're touring now. I don't know a lot about music, but they have you on music. They have you on comedy clubs. They have you on theater events near you with killer last minute deals, all in prices. Views from your seats. If you're a visual learner like myself, you just click on it and they'll show you what it looks like. And their best prices guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have flash deals, different zone deals for wherever you're seating. You can view seats from all over the venue and whatnot. Lowest prices, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. They're good, man. They're good. And it's right up to the event, by the way. Like, you can just decide. Like, you don't have to worry about planning super far in advance. That's really great about Game Time. So go check that out, guys. And again, also Game Time guarantee. You'll get. Don't worry if you find some better seats. They help you out with that too. 110% of difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time, guys. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for a free $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, obviously, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed with Game Time. And just like that, we're back, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Locked On We Hate You, Javier Reyes Padres podcast. We're talking about trading Ha-Seong Kim. Let's get into it. So one of the things that I also wrote in my article is that bottom line is it's, and again, the vibes with Kim cannot be understated. This is a guy who's, he didn't turn into a pumpkin in high leverage situations. He's a known procurer of the vibes, smile. He's BFFs with Manny Machado. He talks crap in Spanish, which Lord knows I appreciate very much. But given all of the salary cap issues, I just think that this is one of those guys you need to trade. And the obvious first reason is what I just mentioned, salary cap issues. And this comes with, there's two edges of this. Number one, which is the obvious, which is Kim is set to be a free agent. This is the most obvious point that can be made, obviously. He has no control. He's not under control following the 2024 season. And even if the Padres could afford an extension, should they? As good as he is, he could have peaked offensively last year. The hard hit rate and all that stuff, his average exit velocity, it doesn't portend of more power on the way. Don't think that because he hits 17 home runs, he's going to hit more. I'm not saying that that's where a lot of his value is going to come from. It's going to be decent, and it's going to be seeing a lot of pitches as a leadoff type of hitter. Don't get me wrong. He's still good. He's got a good walk rate, like I said, but he might have peaked. And this is a team that tends to be, like a little bit of the prisoner of the moment. And I think that they always tend to invest in what's right in front of their faces. Everyone who listens to this podcast, not everyone, my apologies, but a lot of people who listen and watch this podcast, they're always like, we'll just extend him and trade Cronenworth. And my thing is, well, yeah, you can't trade Cronenworth though. This is the same situation in terms of the sentiment that happened with Eric Hosmer, where everyone was telling me for years, like, just trade Eric Hosmer. And it's like, yeah, but no one wants him. That's the problem with trading Jay Cronenworth. No one wants him right now because of one of, in my opinion, the worst move AJ Preller has made. I really think that this is a worse move than Eric Hosmer. Because Eric Hosmer, I think it's a little bit more hindsight 2020. Don't get me wrong, it was still bad in the moment. But the Cronenworth one, it was like you actively damaged him by moving him to first base and extending him for 7 years. He's going to be on this team until he's 37 years old. And also, you had 2 more arbitration years left. So what happened there? At least with Hosmer, you could have been like, all right, well, we want to have a leader. We want to show that we're serious. And he was really good last year. I don't know. Again, it's close. Don't get me wrong. It's very close between the two. But for me, also, I don't like extending utility players. I've said this a lot of times, but I would have, if there were 3 options between extending Cronenworth, extending Kim, and extending neither of them, I would have chosen the latter. That would have been my first thing I did. Then if I had to, yeah, I would extend Ha-Seong Kim, because just me personally, I think utility players like this tend to not be the type of players that are going to be irreplaceable. And they're not the type of players that I like to sign long term. You get him for a couple of years, sure. I think DJ LeMahieu is a good example of this, where DJ LeMahieu, the Yankees got a bargain on him. Obviously, I didn't, and most other people didn't know that he was going to be like an MVP bat for those 2 years. But then they extended him afterwards when all the writing was on the wall, and it was like, this isn't great. He's basically just a solid hitter. and that's it. But he doesn't do enough. So if Kim's defense ever falls off or anything like that, as he plays more innings, as he gets more playing time, that could be a problem, because I don't think that this is a bat that is going to be, Xander Bogaerts, where it's like a bat's bat. This is a guy who I think is going to bounce back in a big way this coming year. So I think that that's a problem. I really do. And I think that extending utility players just isn't the way to go. I think you can find guys who can make up a little bit of what Ha-Seong Kim does. A little bit. I'm not saying a lot, but you can find people that fill roles like him. Same thing for Jake Cronenworth. I just think that that's a lot more replaceable. So for me, I just don't like going all in on utility players. That's my big thing. And he's a free agent after this year. And if there's one thing we've learned over these last few years is, guys, come on. What has been the one thing they keep doing? Investing in the moment. So extending Kim, as tempting as it might be, as fun as it would be, don't get me wrong, if it did get announced, it would be fun. My thing is, the definition of insanity, doing things over and over the same way. I kind of like that the Padres are approaching this offseason and saying, what have we been doing these past few years? Extending everyone, signing everyone, trading for everyone. So instead, let's try and build a team. Let's be a little bit more patient, because we have those stars. Now, whether or not they'll work is something that we can all debate about and talk about on things like this podcast. But you have the stuff in place. My issue is always when teams don't even have the stars in place, and then they don't even lock up a utility. You know what I mean? This isn't the Oakland A's, who should, if they had Ha-Seong Kim, lock him up. You know what I mean? Because they don't have those other stars, right? They aren't spending the money just yet. The Padres already are. And with him being a free agent, with him being a utility player, I think that that's a big part of this for sure. The next thing I want to talk about is there's just a lot of other positions that the Padres need to upgrade in when it comes to their team. They have a lot of questions. I just already mentioned the outfield following the departure of Soto alongside Trent Grisham, who I keep forgetting to mention is not a Padre anymore, because Soto was obviously the highlight of that deal. They're currently set to fill in the gaps with Jackson Merrill, Graham Pollard, Jacob Marcy, as Ken Rosenthal mentioned in his article and attested to himself. While there's not necessarily anything wrong with betting on young talent to fill out your roster, having more established help for a team that's in a win now phase might actually be the better course of action, and it might be for less of a salary. I've talked about this a lot, but I really do think Lamont Wade Jr. would be the perfect get for the Padres. And again, I know what you might be thinking right now. You're like, dude, are you kidding me? Lamont Wade? Lamont Wade's a good player. He's a really good player, actually, at points. He had a 122 WRC plus last year, 2.1 F4. He's not a great defensive player, but nice on base percentage, 373 last year. He was like a mini Juan Soto. He hit for a decent amount of power, 17 home runs, and he doesn't cost anything. So you'd be saving on that. This next year, he's making $3.5 million. That's nothing, and that's just for 2024. Don't get me wrong. It would only be for 1 year, so you'd probably also want to get some prospects attached to this. But I think what would be great here is he could fill out one of those outfield spots or play first base. So that way, when Ha-Seong Kim gets traded, you could have Jake Cronenworth move to first base. So he could go out in the outfield, or you can move him back to first base. He could do everything, and I feel like that would be a decent return. And then you decide what you do with Lamont Wade later, and he's going to be a player that helps you. Right? So that's just one example. That's just one example. Again, one example. Let me be very clear. You could, again, he doesn't cost as much, so you'd be saving in the long term, at least potentially for the moment, at least for right now. Although granted, I don't know if the difference between the salary would be enough for just this 1 year. $7 million versus 3.5, you save $3 million. I don't know exactly what that would do, but going forward, I don't think Lamont Wade would have that issue. And if I'm not mistaken, let me just check this really quickly. He's also, I think he's got next year under club control, but let me just confirm that. Lamont Wade. Yes, he's arbitration eligible for this year. Like I said, 3.5 million. So you're saving 3.5 if you were to acquire him. And then next year he's arbitration eligible, and he would probably make, depending on how the season goes, right? Like if he's another 2-win player, maybe that goes up to like 5 or 6, but still he's under club control. And then you don't have him long term. If you want to keep Ha-Seong Kim, it's going to be an extension. Then he's on the books for a while longer, which cripples your flexibility a little bit more. It's already crippled with this current team with so many players locked down. And that's just one example. You might even be able to net, major caliber players from multiple positions, not just Lamont Wade, but a prospect, a reliever. This is a team that still has a questionable bullpen, still has questionable pitchers after potentially losing Blake Snell, after losing Josh Hader, Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo. So I like the idea of using Kim to address some other issues around the rest of the team. But again, that's just me. Maybe I'm an idiot, and maybe everyone hates me that I even brought up Lamont Wade. But I do think it would make sense. I really, really do. I think that guy's good, and I think he's a hitter who could play well with multiple positions, and that's just an idea. Just one idea. Already mentioned the Brewers, already mentioned teams like the Guardians, the Mariners, if you could potentially pry away one of their pitchers, right? Like maybe, not even one of their starting pitchers, but just anything. Get back Paul Sewald, or not Paul Sewald, Andres Muniz. I don't know. You know what I mean? Get Ty France or something like that. Oh man, Ty France would be fun. But, I'm just giving some examples, ladies and gentlemen. But before we conclude with the last pieces of evidence and the last things we have to talk about for Ha-Seong Kim potentially being traded, in my opinion, a necessity to be traded, let me first take a second, guys, to talk to you about our longtime sponsor. We love them. It's FanDuel, folks. It's Thursday. You've only got a few more days left until the Super Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. It's all we know is going to be talked about for the whole weekend, and probably the full week if you're a big sports fan. So happy to all Super Bowl fans who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And if you're like me, you want to get that couch seat, you want to get some snacks, you bring a video game on the side if you get bored. If the game's a blowout, that's what I do sometimes. So like that, like Patriots Rams, I think a few years back, like that was one of those where I was like, I'm playing my Switch on the side. Wake me up when something actually happens. Or, Broncos Seahawks back in the day. I was just playing a game. You know what I mean? I was just like, yeah, do something. But you also can make bets, and there's all sorts of prop bets. Is Taylor Swift gonna propose, or vice versa, to Travis Kelce? All right, maybe that's not going to happen, but fun props are always available for these things, and that's what's a lot of fun. Gatorade color and coin toss and duration of the halftime show, what songs Usher plays. They've got you on that, and they've got you on all your player props, which players will score touchdowns, how many points will be scored in total, and so much more. Personally, I'm a big Isaiah Pacheco guy for this game and a Christian McCaffrey guy. Either one, whatever floats your boat, I think we're due for a Super Bowl game in which a running back has a big game. It could be either of them too. And I'm siding with Pacheco because he's Puerto Rican, so I want to, support my guy. But they've got you covered on all sorts of things, guys. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Locked On Padres podcast, finishing things up. All right, so we've already talked about Kim from afar. We've already talked about how he's going to be a free agent, and we've talked about how the Padres need to upgrade in other areas. And I use Lamont Wade as like the avatar for that. I'm not saying he's the only one you could trade for. I'm just saying an idea of what could happen there. And one of the things that I brought up was that he could play first base and outfield. Yeah, that's the other thing. Jake Cronenworth is a huge part of potentially trading Ha-Seong Kim. And again, don't get me wrong. I just mentioned before how extending utility players isn't great because Jake Cronenworth was really bad last year. Really bad in a lot of ways. And don't get me wrong, I still like the guy, but he just wasn't a very effective player. And again, I already discussed, I really think this could be one of the worst moves of Preller's career. But Jake Cronenworth isn't going anywhere, right? No report has said that. That's because no one wants him. If he didn't have that extension, you could get something for him. I promise you. People would be interested. But 10 home runs last year. He slashed 229, 312, 378, 92 WRC plus, 1 F4 in 127 games. He's just not built for first base because he's a really good defensive player. Where in previous years, he put up a 4.2 F4 in 2022 and a 4.2 F4 in 2021. And in 2022, that, by the way, was when his batting head went down. He slashed 239, 332, 390 in 2022. But the defense and some of the other things that he was able to do, being a utility player, made up for that. And he was still a 4-win player. That's like, I would be on the side of let's try and salvage Jake Cronenworth. And one of the ways that you can do that is not trying to trade him or anything like that, or trying to like buy him out or anything like that. But if you move Ha-Seong Kim, suddenly second base is open. Boom. You can go there. He can be the full-time second baseman again. And then we can look at this contract and not hate ourselves and just be in this position where we're constantly dreaming of another team being a sucker to take this thing on. I don't think it's going to happen. Again, if he wasn't extended, I think teams would take him, and they'd be like, you idiots, you didn't put him at second base. So that's where I think we're at. And again, it was just not great. It was not great. And he was like a top 5 F4 guy at second base at one point. It's like, imagine if you put Nico Horner of the Cubs at first base, or Francisco Lindor at first base. Obviously, I don't think that Jay Cronenworth is as good as Francisco Lindor, but that's the basic gist of what I'm trying to get after here. So instead of just forcibly trying to move on from him in a situation similar to Hosmer, where remember that Mets trade that almost went through? I think it was like Paddock and Hosmer for like Dom Smith and one of their pitchers. I forgot who the pitcher was, but it was like almost went through apparently. Trading Ha-Seong Kim would ostensibly not just get you, let's use the Lamont Wade thing as a framework. Let's say Lamont Wade and a Giants prospect that's a pitcher, whatever. Not even the top one. We're not getting Kyle Harrison too. You do that, you would also ostensibly in that trade get back Jake Cronenworth, which could be awesome and recoup some of his value. And if you go by Zip's projections, his bat is actually expected to rebound above average, being above the, what is it? In terms of OPS plus, be above, like a 106. That puts him above average. So they're expecting him to rebound. And imagine if you couple that with better defense. All of a sudden, losing Kim, yes, it would stink, but all of a sudden you have Jay Cronenworth back at second. You have Lamont Wade at first base. Maybe you go get another first baseman in free agency, one for cheap. Let's say, I talked about Brandon Belt yesterday. Maybe he doesn't cost anything and you get him, potentially to fill out that DH spot when Machado gets back and then he's, at third base and then you figure out DH. That would be really exciting. It would. And also with Lamont Wade, he can play outfield. So I would really like that move. And then you don't have to worry about, these future implications of the fact that you could lose Ha-Seong Kim for nothing, the same way we just went through losing Josh Hader for nothing, and what it looks like will be losing Blake Snell for nothing. So that's the situation you're in here. And I know the next question people are going to ask, well, Javi, you dumb idiot. You Dumbo McSpookatron, McFraudatron, I should say, actually. What are you talking about? Manny Machado is injured. Yeah, I know, guys. I know. Manny Machado, while he works his way back from surgery, is going to need a fill-in at third base, and that is expected to be Ha-Seong Kim. It would hurt. It would cause issues at third base. But that shouldn't prevent you from making a move that could benefit you greatly in the long term, instead of just keeping him at third base because you want because you just really don't want to have that one bad month. Because it's not like Manny Machado's out for the whole year. We don't know exactly how long it's going to take for him to get back. If it's a long time, okay. Like if I knew Machado was out until like August, then yes, I understand being like, let's not do this. But if it's just going to be that we have opening day in, what is it, April? I forgot. We got like 50 days, so it should be like March actually. No, it should be like April. Hold on. Why don't I know when opening day is? When the heck is opening day? March 28th. Okay. If it's like end of April that he gets back and he can play third base again, I just don't think that that's worth sacrificing the other value you can get that I just mentioned from getting another player, from getting someone who can move on first base and be a proper first baseman, from getting some outfielders instead of some unproven commodities, not to dehumanize them, in Paulie, Merrill, and Jacob Marcy. And then you can get a lot of value from Jake Cronenworth. Jake Cronenworth might put up like a single win above replacement for the first month just for being at second base and just existing there. That's how good of a defender he is at times. So I don't want to sacrifice the future because the first month might be tricky. And also, you can find someone to play there. You can find someone to move around the diamond. Aside from the farm system, I wouldn't hate just trying out Eddy Rosario. Everyone is like all in on this idea of giving the young guys a try. Well, Eddy Rosario still had a 106 WRC plus last year. Maybe you can bring him up to play third base for just a month or so until Manny Machado gets back. Now, let me be very clear. This last point depends greatly on Manny Machado's health, right? This part. If he's out for a lot longer, I do not want Eddy Rosario being the starting third baseman for this team for too long. But in fairness, last year in limited time, 2 defensive runs saved, 1 outs above average. He can field a little bit. He can field. I know he doesn't walk, which is super frustrating, or at least he didn't walk, but he's 23 years old. I wouldn't mind trying this guy out and giving him a chance at some point, especially since he was like an average hitter. He put the bat onto the ball. He did some stuff. I just don't think it would stink to just try that out for a month, and then Machado gets back, and then maybe Eggy gets demoted, or maybe he's good, and then you have another asset on the team. So that would just be me. I would much rather get all of the potential return, have Cronenworth at second base to give us some value there, and then, yeah, you might suffer with Eddy Rosario, but just hope that the rest of the team steps up. You can't be assuming that players last year and you're building for the next year, that everyone's going to be as bad as they were last year. So you're like, we have to keep Kim because he's the only one that steps up. No, what if Tatis reverts to MVP form with his bat? What if Xander Bogaerts finally figures out how to drive in a run? What if Manny Machado was really good at DH to start the season? What if you get something out of any of your minor league guys? What if you get something out of Jay Cronenworth, right? So I just think that it's really worth the risk there for the little bit of time that Manny Machado might miss. And don't get me wrong, all this, to just tie a bow on it, it's going to stink. I want to be very clear. I love Ha-Seong Kim. And my job is to just kind of talk about what I analyze this Padres team and my opinions on what I think would be good for the team going forward. I don't mean for this to be hot take central. Although I would like everyone to, remember every now and then that like there's a reason why people have to have hot takes. And it's clicks, but it's more than like, think about the reason why people want clicks. It's not always just selfish. You know what I mean? People want to survive out in this ecosystem sometimes. So that's my thing. I'm not trying to be that way. I genuinely think for all those reasons that he's going to be a free agent next year because you could recoup value from Cronenworth moving him back to second base, because I just don't think that you have to worry about the fact that no one's going to play third for a month. That's a superstar. Try out Eddy Rosario. Try out one of your minor league players. I don't know. See what happens in spring training. I would just rather go that route if it's not for that long. But again, we'll have to wait and see how Machado's recovery is. The fact that you need more replacements. I just think that this is a team that it's their best trade asset. You're not trading Cronenworth. And I don't think they should trade the farm. I don't care who they're getting. You know what I mean? Let's not blow up the farm, because what did I mention earlier? I'm sorry, on yesterday's podcast, this team loves just investing in the moment. So instead of doing that, instead of always go, superstar hunting and getting all these mercenaries in like you're forming the Avengers, instead just have a more homegrown team to support the superstars you already have. Let's try something different for once. So that's me. That's my opinion. You might hate it, but I really do think that the Padres need to trade Ha-Seong Kim. And there's never been a better time than now. And it's not like we know for sure that this guy is a super stud. Because like I said, I just don't think utility players are the type of people that I want to invest in long term, particularly and especially when I've already got these big contracts on my team. That's just me. I feel like it's a little bit more, it could be a little bit more open. What's the word for open? A little bit more turnstile-y every now and then with that position. Turnstile is also a bad word too. That sounds bad. I love you, Kim, and I will always love you. And remember, go look it up. I was one of the people parading and just championing this guy, heading off of the bad rookie season when everyone wanted to give up and they're like, call up Abrams, trade Kim, he's not any good. And to a smaller extent, the year after when he was a little bit not as beloved among some people. So I've been championing him for a while. I just think that this would be a perfect sell high candidate. But again, that's just me. Maybe you disagree. What do I know? And with that all being said, everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. After this hot take, we're going to be cooling down a little bit. We're going to be ranking the Padres players. Just overall, I just want to rank the entire team of who I think the best overall players are. That should be a lot of fun. Just to talk about what to look forward to and some of the stars for next season. Going to be doing that. Going to also be talking about my personal picks for X Factors. Going to be doing some bold predictions, I think, for the Padres this next year. And plenty of other ideas. Old takes exposed, we might do. All sorts of stuff, because we're still at 5 a week, ladies and gentlemen. So there's plenty of content coming your way. Plenty of ideas, even if I haven't fully figured them out and finished them up yet. But don't worry, we're here for you. And until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies. Take care.